Welcome to the Boston Art Podcast,
Boston's premier art podcast,
where we talk art, culture, and philosophy.
My name is Theodore Earthworms.
And I am Brian Huntress.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, no. I like just diving off like a bungee cord and stuff. I'm ready when you're ready.
Oh, hell yeah. Awesome, man. So, yeah, welcome. Thanks for coming on our show. I guess to give you a little context, because we don't really know each other, we have been doing this for about 3.5 years, and, you know, I'm 28, Theo's 26, and we've been doing art in Boston for the past 10 years, and, like, we've been trying to kind of build a holistic picture of the city through interviews and stuff like that. And you had been recommended as someone we should talk to for quite some time, you know, and like, you know, I've watched a lot of your videos and a lot of your music and stuff. And it's like, I really like that you represent kind of, you know, I don't know, in an awesome way, kind of an older picture of Boston, you know, one that kind of happened before my time.
Absolutely. I mean, I love Boston dearly. I feel like regardless if I'm playing Robby Roadsteamer or myself, I hope that does shine through and everything, especially being out in California the last several years, to just have the opportunity to come back to this area in a meaningful way, aka connecting and collaborating with a lot of our up-and-coming creative types. You know, I feel like I'm really in the trenches of that right now with this scene and shit, so I appreciate that somebody put in a good word for me or what. But yeah, I'm down to ball when it comes to talking about creative. Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and it seems like you're really active. Like, you know, one thing that I know you've gotten a lot of attention for is it's collaborations with Vermin Supreme. Could you like tell us about that, or like what's it like working with that guy?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Vermin's definitely been like a guru in my life, like a sort of a Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie to like a Bob Dylan and stuff.
Wow.
And I got hip to Vermin about 12 years ago. I saw him on C-SPAN, glitter bombing Randall Terry, who was a known homophobe, Democratic candidate and whatnot. And it was legendary. It was viral. And it brought what I felt like was Andy Kaufman's performance art to the 21st century on a political landscape. I mean, sure, we have our Borat, but man, Borat was already doing that on third base, meaning that he had already broken through. Madonna featured him in videos. He had his HBO shows and whatnot. And Vermin was this really romantic, grassroots candidate, activist, performance artist, comedian that came out of the Rainbow family. Basically, they meet in a state park every year, like 70,000. And I do recall Vermin saying that started off as him wearing the boot as he was walking around the festivals and whatnot, and people really digging it and stuff. So what a beautiful organic way it came to fruition. And we met up in 2012, went down to the Democratic National Convention, and from there, man, I've been around for 4 political cycles with him, election cycles, 2012, 16, 20, 24, and I helped produce his documentary and, you know, toured 30 cities with him. Wow. You know, just something that really was earth-shattering, because I'll say something, it's tough as fuck up in New England to DIY alternative art for a living up here. It hasn't been developed in that department yet to a sort of degree of Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Haight-Ashbury, New York, or LA. We got so many talented, diabolical motherfuckers struggling up here. And at a certain point, they tap out, and they have to delegate it to a hobby, and they have to talk slightly different about what once was a sort of secret ambition for them to own their lives through doing creative. And then you have people like Vermin Supreme that have figured out that magic trick. Like, he's a folk hero, lives in the middle of the fucking woods in Gloucester. And here's this guy, like, raising like $100,000 or whatnot as the Libertarian candidate in 2020, and giving a lot of performance artists DIY by artists in general around New England, I feel like hope that you can be part of a real counterculture up here and a real community, and you can make art that's meaningful, and it doesn't have to be V for Vendetta fucking mass, blocking traffic and shit, with all due respect, as much as trying to find a way to bring together people when everybody in these political parties are doing everything to divide us over mass, over gender norms, over a lot of dumbass fucking shit, when all we should be doing is figuring out ways as a country to come together. And what's a better way than a man with a boot on his head giving out free ponies?
Right, yeah. Shit, so I actually had no idea that he came out of the rainbow scene. I have two cousins that they're a lot younger than me, and they've been like super involved in the rainbow family stuff for a number of years now, and it seems like a very misunderstood movement. Are you a part of the rainbow group or family as well? Or do you go to those gatherings?
On the outskirts and stuff, and where they sort of originated from around the Woodstock era. I'm just a huge fan of Haight-Ashbury, the Merry Pranksters, the Diggers, the people who back in the day provided true community for counterculture, a place, you're talking Golden Gate Park, where the Diggers used to feed 5,000 people a day back in like 66, 67, bring the first Doctors Without Borders to these people. And the fact of it is, the music scene, which was already in a hotbed there, basically became a lightning rod for just putting an eye on the scene that was already there. I feel like Vermin picks up a large part of the pace with this, with the Rainbow family, is that, I like the Occupy movement. That was good. Hey, let's finally just stick up to what's happening in this country with the gross division in pay and resources and rights from corporations to people, and just try to give some power back to the people. I just feel it was done in a really divisive, scary way by guys in V for Vendetta mass. I like seeing Vermin Supreme out there bringing MAGA heads, woke, weirdos, wastoids, time bombs, all together. They think he's a righteous dude. And when you get together with Vermin, you're getting together with community. You start to find, a lot of people who are also part of Mass Cam, Hempfest, Freedom Rally. You find a large part of the counterculture when you roll with Vermin. And I think that's what's sorely missing in Boston right now, is that arts on a city level is just delegated to the MFA or murals on the scaffolding around condos being put up. I don't think it's represented in the way that, we can give our local artists, again, resources for them to rise. I have a dream, maybe of a Seattle or Haight-Ashbury, but on the very least, give these motherfuckers some terrestrial FM radio stations back. Give them back their FNX, their AAF, their BCN. Let's king make some amazing local talent again on Chronicle, on ABC, or bring back our Boston Phoenix and our print. Let's start to reform the remnants of a really hotbed alternative scene. Because I'll just tell you this, if we don't, America usually looks at us as your dumb cousin from Sam Adams, or, a Dunks commercial parody on SNL. Yeah. And I think we're better than that. I think really we can lock down an amazing talent, whether they just come here for college. I think we can just lock down on them, whether they're living here, and keep a couple of cycles of really talented people in this area, so we can finally have financial stability and viability as alternative artists. So we can finally have maybe a real budding scene that the rest of the country can look at and be like, oh my God, that's how it's done. And what a great place to do it, because if we do it, 5 states are going up with us. New England's going up with us. This isn't a solo project. We all go up together. And I see a large part of that with Vermin Supreme, and I see a large part of that with the collectives and the communities that I choose to champion around the Boston area.
Yeah, you talked a lot about about public radio stations and TV and stuff. And one thing looking into your background that I found really peculiar is that you have a long history, not just with YouTube and internet content, but also with radio and appearing on like various like reality TV shows and stuff. And I find that so interesting as an alternative artist like yourself. How did you find yourself in these spaces? Do you feel like, I don't know, because that's something like, at least in my network and maybe even age group, I don't know. I rarely see my peers ending up in settings like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you two things. One, I am a dreamer. I really do believe in great expectations, and I can't stop that. My dreams get really lucid, and I really live out sort of the daytime adventures that I yearn for. And I think, B, a lot of people have given up on that. I feel like a lot of people have taken more of a passive participation standpoint, almost being a hipster in sort of the calculated moves that musicians and artists make locally, because they don't want to look bad in front of their peers or in front of their suburbanites. You know, in order to really do sort of the artist 100%, it's like a samurai. You have to bet your life. You have to go 100%. You have to leave your house at the beginning of the day with sort of this, you know what, I have to go all in on ideas. So that being said, like when it comes to the TV, the radio, mainly WBCN, which was Clear Channel, Infinity Broadcasting, like CBS, it's huge. And they have a rock and roll rumble every year. And I infiltrated through that. And a large part of doing like Robby Roadsteamer on the air and screaming on WBCN was also identifying local music and putting the heart and soul and attitude into trying to reestablish our scene and the deterioration of it. And magic trick I feel like I have is infiltration. Like, I feel like I went to college for FCC law. I'm no dummy when it comes to what you can and can't do on TV. You know, I appeared on last season America's Got Talent, ABC The Gong Show. I produced a documentary for my late friend China from the WWE for Vice and A&E. I was even on Ellen scaring her and her producer because I worked at the It Haunted House for Warner Brothers in L.A. I was on the last finale of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, season 13, when Mac is dancing for his dad in prison. Yeah, I've done background acting on Westworld and fucking American Horror Story. And I've also been called out by the late, great Jerry Remy at Red Sox games and appeared on dating shows at Fenway Park. And really what it's about, if you can fucking bust your ass as a creative type, it's not easy, especially if you're going at it at 100%. And rarely do people do. I mean, we have to be down to earth. We can't be pie in the sky. We have to be real cool around our friends and family and be like, yeah, I know. I have a show at O'Brien's, but I'm not going to live or die behind it and shit. I say live or die behind it. Go all in on that O'Brien show. It's your last chance at Woodstock Coachella dreams. That's what Robby Roadsteamer does. I'm kind of a wimp and I'm a dork, so it's really difficult for me. But Robby picks up right there. Right. You know, he'll be in front of the model with these seeds and this hammer. We're going to rebuild your dirty, shitty Boston music scene tonight. And it's like, I feel like we need to get away from sort of the anonymous hipsters, like Black Keys and like faceless front, men for bands and shit. We need the personalities again. We need to find our new Mr. Butches, who was the king of Kenmore and would do poetry and followed the Grateful Dead and had sex with women on cardboard in front of O'Brien's. And we need that back on the streets, because right now we have a lot of people with their heads down in Alston getting to their next generation destination and stuff, and we're losing our personalities. Scumbag Mike, who would sit on top of the mailbox in front of Harold's Ice Cream, and he'd heckle you. And it was your initiation into the scene. And you could become a god if you played your cards right. Now everybody's just grabbing bubble teas, and they got their heads down, and they're going to the glass shop to get some weed so they can run home and escape.
Yeah. It seems like you also are like, one thing I find really interesting too is that you seem to just naturally fall into characters. Like, do you feel like, do you consider
Louis
yourself a
Potylo,
performance
father,
artist?
Vietnam veteran, toxic narcissist, alcoholic with a black handlebar mustache. If you grew up with me in Danvers, you know exactly where the character comes from, and you know why.
So the characters are inspired by your environment. The people of
my dad, and sort of that masshole sort of personality that I'm sure we all bump into if we've ever gone
or
to
embody.
A sports bar where there's this one guy that will not leave the room until everybody's in the same mood as him or her. And the fact of it was that my dad was a Sith Lord, a dark master of the arts of completely taking the energy out of a room like a fucking WWE heel, aka Why I Met China and shit, was like my dad literally was that guy. He coached my little league team even though he didn't like baseball, so he could drink Coors, have fucking Daisy Duke shorts on and the denim shorts in the outfield, and scream at fucking players on the team until they had mental breakdowns. Not to out him too much, but it was a lot of homophobic slurs that he would throw out at the fucking players and shit. And then their dads would come, and rather than to be like, oh, I'm having a bad day, you know, Vietnam was hell on a lot of us, he would double down and be like, well, if your son wasn't acting like a... I would have to fucking yell at him. And, I mean, I have them in a couple of videos on the Roadsteamer, like Easter or whatnot and everything. And you can see the remnants of it. But I also have a lot of VHS tapes from the 90s where you get, like... you know, like 10 years removed from his prime, you know, his 80, you know, in the 80s, he was spellbinding. Daisy Duke jean cut off shorts, brown tinted, like fucking Jim Jones, fucking, you know, Massacre Jonestown glasses.
Right.
And like, you know, the black handlebar mustache. And Oliver Stone and a bunch of directors did me no fucking favors by releasing all those Vietnam movies in the 80s. Because my dad saw every one of them. He got re-triggered. And he would go crazier. He got thrown out of my mom's job 5 times at Filene's basement. Because I want to see my... And I can't even yell here. I want to do it justice. But I don't want to see my fucking wife, Patricia. You know? And... that's a little bit of the energy where I needed to either become a school shooter or make art lemonade by taking all that pain, all that mind fucking. You know, I haven't even gotten into what he would do to me and shit.
Right.
And somehow make art. And I wasn't planning on that. I think art came to me almost like fucking grasshopper, like kung fu, like being in the woods. You know, I was being bullied at school. I got my nose broken by Brian Wilczewski. Yeah, I'm going to fucking out you. Yeah, I'm going to out you. Pushing me from behind into that big wooden pole at the Danvers High School library. You know how my nose was crooked, and he wouldn't even let me go to the school nurse. He sat with me for the whole study. You know, you got to go to the nurse. Linebacker, the fucking Davis High School Falcons. You guys went like 3-10. Fuck that, dude. So anyways, like, yeah, just a lot of bullying and a lot of bullshit like that and stuff. And it was like, yeah, man, it had to go somewhere. I could have just really stewed on it for the rest of my fucking life and shit. Or... for some weird reason, when my dad would threaten to blow his head off with a shotgun that he should have been using for deer hunting in the Berkshires, and he was using to scare my mom and me, and my mom would pull me out of the house, ages 9, 10, 11, me and my sister, and I would impersonate my dad in the car to my mother while we drove around waiting for him to pass out, looking in the lights in the apartment in Danvers and waiting. You know, I started impersonating him. I'm going to blow my head off. And it came from that. And like comedy and like art came for me as a way to process probably what was otherwise unprocessable. And, you know, like, years of therapy and shit to, you know, sort of deal with.
Yeah, and that chaos too, like it really comes out in your art. Do you find when you're doing these things and screaming and you're out on the street playing guitar and yelling at people, like, do you think a lot of people feel like you are making art, or are they just totally fucking like or are they just totally have no idea how to react to you? Like, because I've seen a lot of videos of you at protests, like fucking with like, you know, crazy anti-abortion people or something.
Yeah, yesterday, Planned Parenthood, what's up? I'll be dropping that Thursday. It's already a little bit on TikTok, man, but I did shipping up to Planned Parenthood yesterday like 100 times. It was like 40 on 1 down there. They had a parade of the forced birthers and shit.
I see.
And
you just go there and ruin it.
Aggressive, and you know what, honestly, most of them don't. Even the volunteers, when I hit the Planned Parenthood last weekend with Foo Fighters, weren't sure to make of it either until afterwards. And then yesterday I found out the volunteers actually all watched the video and they were loving it. And honestly, man, I mean, a large part of my work, I feel like, is punk rock.
Right.
It's throwing back into people's faces what I feel like are their contradictions or their hatred. You know, that's why I feel like I have trouble, like, making a real participating fan base, because a lot of my songs are throwing back at people like hot dogs and applesauce, like, gonna snort Adderall and play Call of Duty. Hey, hot dogs and applesauce. Like, it's throwing back in people's faces, like, the mundaneness of their lives. Like, I put a baby in you because you kept talking about going to college. Like, it's throwing back in people's faces, sort of like, hey, this is what you're choosing to do with your fucking life. You might think I'm a joke, but I might be a mirror. And I do think a large amount of people, until they see the videos afterwards, have problems, especially the MAGA heads, when I come up dressed as shitty Kid Rock. And I'm like, I'm on your side, though, dude. Hey, where did we go? Days when the feds came. Down to Mar-a-Lago. Right. Yeah. And like, I really do think, I mean, it is like something that's tough for people to process in the moment. And thank God, because if they do try to figure it out in their heads quicker and shit, sometimes they get aggressive and shit. And it does feel like when I do a lot of these things, not as much of a comedy performance, but Houdini. Like, man, here we go. We're getting in another Shark Tank here. Hope I can get out before the MAGA heads pick up on the energies, and I might not be able to come, you know, but I'm not a fatalist, but I'm just saying this art is needed right now. A bigger question one should be asking or answering is, why is there nobody else really out there? There really isn't anymore. After the Occupy shit really got shut down, you go to these MAGA events, you go to a large part of, like, even Planned Parenthood, there was nobody on the opposite end yesterday. I mean, the forced birthers were like 40 to 50 strong. A lot of people, you know, when it comes to sort of arts and the activism, and I know there's protests with activists, but I'm talking more or less about artist participation in it more. Like, I would like to see more of that. You got tens of millions of fucking musician motherfuckers all digging in the same place, trying to be the next Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, you know, cock star. Instead of understanding the aesthetics of what really makes those types of people, that they're cult of personality. They're cornerstones to what was the grunge community, which was a lot of left-leaning, liberal, Starbucks drinking activists that were looking once again like Monterey Summer of Love for that lightning rod to just shine onto a scene that was already organic and grassroots and pulsating. And I don't think a lot of artists really put that together. I think we've had now a couple generations removed from a large part of the real magic of it, where now it's focused in on American Idol, pop culture, TikTok, lip syncing more and more. It's about getting all your money in a capitalistic society, getting your credibility, getting your whip, your Rari, and hiding behind a wrought iron gate mansion while you're seeing if you can run up your video game score on Instagram likes. And I think we're losing something in the process that we have to get back to sort of that attitude and that edge that I think people like Vermin Supreme, the Merry Pranksters, the 60s, the grunge period, sort of showed us that we can take the baton away from Los Angeles for a little while. Axl Rose and hair bands and New Kids on the Block, and bring it up to Seattle like it was in the early 90s. And for a little while, the whole country was moving and shaking. I remember all the jocks getting into their fucking flannel shirts when that shit happened. Brian's breaking noses, and then the next year he's wearing a flannel. Good for him. But I remember the paradigm shift in counterculture in schools. Women started dating the weirdos because he could have been the next fucking Bird or fucking Lane Staley or some shit, and it was amazing. And I think we have that in our country again, and I really think there's another Seattle somewhere, and I think that what a treat it would be to just steal the baton from New York for a little while for culture, instead of once again being stereotyped on a national level as the dumb fuck bad accent donkey cigarette smoking townie on the edge of town. Nothing wrong with that. We know a lot of those exist. I just think America could really use a big dose of our arts from behind, make it shitty again.
I wonder too, all the artists that are operating here right now that are doing that, balancing the day job, keeping their head down kind of thing. Do you think they're losing an opportunity for connection and catharsis with that emotional expression piece too by not having that scene here?
I'm sorry, what was the beginning part of that? The emotional, what was...
I feel like there's a missed opportunity there by not having that scene active to kind of connect on an emotional level with other artists.
Absolutely, because we're now, like I'm saying, getting a few generations removed from, even for Boston, that late 90s, the Rat, FNX, the Rumble used to be held at the Wang Center, for Christ's sakes, and shit. And the power that local art and local music had over a culture where it was able to really king make and queen make people. And as we're getting more and more removed, we're losing so many people to other cities that are looking for the artists and whatnot, New York and LA primarily, but we're also losing a large part of the unjadedness that a large part of people I have around here. I just got back, from California last year, and a big part of starting Make Boston Shitty again last year, so the comedy video into a movement or whatnot, was it allowed me to get into a lot of the scenes and pockets of Berkeley kids, mass art, Emerson, house shows being put on by Cuck, Cuntapalooza 2 weeks ago at the Cambridge Community Center, Wonderland, Monkey Palace, great fucking house show venues.
I remember the Monkey Palace.
I see a lot with those kids, the unjadedness and the magic in their eyes. They want to take over, and they have a lot of chutzpah still. And in this city, we do you death by 1,000 paper cuts, little slights. How's your little thing going? I saw the link. I didn't click on it. Oh, you're still doing your little fucking TikTok thing, huh? I'm sorry, dude. I'm kidding. And I do think we're sorely losing a lot of people that are these struggling weekend warriors fighting to try to claim their lives while surrounded by people that have long ago settled and are doing everything with the death by 1,000 paper cuts technique to sort of pull down aspirations and dreams with sort of sentences. How's your little link doing? How's your band doing? I can't get a sitter, so I couldn't go to your show last night. But you enjoy that, huh? You enjoy that little thing you do on stage, right? I mean, I saw the video. I had it on mute. I can't click on the mute at work. You know that. So, good luck with it as long as it's making you happy, Yeah. And they're not going to say outright, stop what you're doing. It's inadvertently pointing out the shackles on my ankles. They're just going to slight you 1,000 times until one night you wake up screaming, "It's just a hobby now."
Well, do you feel like the last generation of young performance artists was Gen X? Because I feel like there's so many like millennials and the Gen Z kids. It seems like kind of a lost art, at least from where I'm sitting.
Once again, we're being so removed from realistic human beings doing their thing. Now we're really facing the force choke of systematic times. And there was a lot of romanticism with Gen X. Once again, man, like grunge, love it or hate it, it took over the axis of the center of culture for this country for a little bit. And with that, you had such an amazing influx of like, almost like the Bible says, the good will be last, the last would be good, that the outsiders, the weirdos, the freaks, the class clowns had a chance to be sort of these crazy performance artists for a little bit. You could be wacky, you could be ironic, you could have a lot more fun. Where I feel now that's rolled over to covering people, to doing dances set to other people's songs or lip syncs set to other people's songs, to passively participate in activism. Like most people's activism now is up on their Instagram stories. Mm-hmm. Like I go through so many motherfuckers' Instagram stories where, they got like 90 like free Palestine, stop forced births and recognize, gender norms or whatnot, hidden on their Instagram stories and like signing petitions instead of going out there and experiencing culture. And it's getting harder and harder. And so maybe, like the Gen Xers, obviously, the Merry Pranksters and the late part of the 60s, the Tune-In, Dropout, Timothy Leary, Electric Kool-Aid, Acid Test, Ken Kesey type crowd, it's not as much. It's not as much. But, the only thing that changes during history is the technology. These stories of the outsiders becoming insiders for a little bit, and power and corruption taking everything back with brute force. It's not new. It's just the technology that changes. So, that being said, I feel like there's another period right around the fucking corner where counterculture is going to bite back. And I feel like in my heart of hearts that, whether or not in my lifetime, there is going to be sort of this renaissance where the last are first for a little bit again. And maybe we do get a true spotlight shined on the arts again and what needs to happen so we can have more and more livelihood in the culture and scenes, especially around cities, man. Walk around those streets on Mass Ave a lot of nights, man. They're frightfully quiet except around the clubs where the Harvard students are wearing their untucked dress shirts and partying. But we need that energy, man. We need that pit back in Harvard Square. We need the human statues down there in full force. We need Tracy Chapman back down there with an acoustic guitar. We need that weirdo puppet guy that does Bill Clinton puppets and then puts the whole stage on the back of a bike and rides off. We need that energy this summer.
Yeah, what do you think the Harvard Square pit really meant to the people who were there? Like, because it seems like, I feel like a lot of people or younger people maybe don't even know that existed or what it even was.
Oh, for sure. There was a holiness to it. And I know that in my heart. As somebody from Danvers, Massachusetts, going down there, it did feel like the last remnants of going into like excitement of creativity and craziness. You didn't know what to expect. You were either going down to the pit or you were going to the Rocky Horror Picture Show down in Harvard Square, and you were trying to find and identify with that creative outside loose cannon culture that sort of takes in the weirdos and the outsiders and sort of the alternative cult. And yeah, man, I loved it. I was joking about the puppet guy, but I thought it was hilarious. You'd have your array of street performers and human statues. That's where Amanda Palmer was doing her thing, 8-foot human statue, whatnot. And we need that. We do need that. It's not accidental that was removed, because because you're dealing with a culture and society that wants to be more and more systematic and wants to force fuck people down these narrow tubes, and they don't want those people looking up. They want them coming home and doing lip sync videos or watching a Netflix series and stuff. They do not want them pulling culture in at the pit, because what if we lose some of our Harvard students that way? What if they want to start doing organic farming instead of folk rock band? Well, that's not going to help our big tech and big corporations around here and stuff. So pull those fucking motherfuckers away from the pit. Replace them with gentrified Barbie pink chairs and Harvard tours and stuff. That was a genius move. Hey, why are you guys interrupting these Harvard tours now and shit like that and stuff? And, you know, I think that we need to double down and we need to get the pit back. In the least form, we should be doing Boston Calling down there.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't even really like picture in my mind what Harvard Square would have looked like back then, like with human statues and street performers. It sounds heartbreaking that it was gutted out that way.
But it's not accidental.
Right.
It's just done with a smile now, and it's always under the false illusions that, you know, we're bringing in more affordable living or some shit like that. Or they don't even care to like make a lie like that. I mean, fuck, man, after they gutted out Great Scott, they kept that empty for 2 years. Didn't care about putting anything. It could have been Great Scott up until that fucking point. You know, now it's a Taco Bell cantina and stuff. And I don't think there's any accident to it. I think that the corporate, capitalistic, big corporate commercial tastelessness side, you know, experienced the 60s and understands that, hey, when you start having these hotbeds of DIY creative culture, you know, that builds and builds, and then it starts to turn into a counter, and then maybe it might become the main, and they don't want that.
Right.
You know, they don't want that. So, you know, there's a lot of over the top just trying to suffocate, whether taking away our radio stations, our print, our pit itself, you know, taking over venues and jam spaces. Hell, man, I lived between Harvard and MIT in Central Square for a year in a 70-room jam space complex called EMF. We had a radio station, WEMF radio. We had 70 rooms bands were practicing in, recording in, smoking weed in, listening to vinyl, listen, when you go to a show for 2 hours, that ain't enough time to, you know, cause a change in your head or a paradigm shift. You know, but when you have a 24/7 arts collective building where it has cheap rent, I mean, mine was free. I'm living in a jam space. I might be waking up to a Metallica cover band at 9 a.m., but my rent's low, and I might be using baby ass wipes, but my rent's low to clean myself, I should say. But the fact of it is, when you're more and more put into alternative culture and the scenes for longer than 2 hours at a show before they force you out, that does plant a lot of seeds. And, you know, the city doesn't want that. They don't want people, you know, fuck Robert Frost, nobody get off the road, you know, more traveled into the path less traveled and stuff, no Kerouac characters. There's definitely a suffocation to, you know, that it's unaccidental. You know, a capitalistic society doesn't want people to drop off and not be in the machine. So I feel like there's a hidden agenda on that side. And, you know, I feel like signing a petition and putting it up on your Instagram stories isn't quite enough to sort of just throw it back in their fucking faces. I think, you know, retake Great Scott, you know, even if it's a Taco Bell cantina. I did. It was fun. I went in there, sang some Joni Mitchell. They paid Great Scott, turned into a Taco Bell cantina. Now they charge $15 just for a little diarrhea. Oh, it always seems to go that you don't know what sucks. Yeah.
Something I like a lot about what you're saying too is I think we've talked to some people before who've asked us, like, Boston does, like, there's murals here, there's sculptures here, there's public art, so like how is this not an art city? And I think what you're talking about is like when people say it's important to center art in your culture, like there's a why there, and you have to really think about the intention behind the art you're making and the culture that you're building, and whether or not there's an actual connection or if it's just something pretty, you know.
Yeah, and really what I feel like with the art, it's spiritual to me. It's community. It's these people doing bands, these people painting murals, these people doing comedy, a lot of them are looking to plug into that alternative culture. Back in the day, salons where artists would get together, and instead of loud Bruins games and a lot of screaming and yelling at the sports bars, you can start to get into conversations like these and start to really, oh man, it just feels like almost meditation, really start to like fill your core with energy through getting into creative pockets and being around creative types. And like I say, if it's longer than 2 hours, I feel like that's when you start, maybe causing that paradigm shift in one's own being. And it's just not easy when the vision of art in the city has been so skewered by the city itself. When the city says art, once again, it's talking about the murals at the MFA and the murals that we have some of our artists able to paint on the wonderful scaffolding in front of the condos we're putting up. Like, that's art for them. When Michelle Wu or Marty Walsh or Mara Menino is saying art, and we're going to give more money to the arts, they were thinking of little kids finger painting. They are not thinking about, man, just raising the collective level of our counterculture, independent artist types, so we don't have to outsource festivals to Boston Calling, so we can have more independent art stores and venues where maybe, God forbid, this is the pie in the sky part, where some of our independent creative types can make a living around here instead of being forced to be ostracized and abandoned. And that's the thing, man. I mean, if we're so busy in this town playing defense and just fighting to stay balanced as creative types, we have no idea of drinking from the cup of potential, having the ability to give outsiders resources. Hey, you guys, good news. We're moving this wonderful podcast to FM 104.1. It's going to be the new Joe Rogan of Boston. We're going to have just wonderful millions of people listening to you. We're going to pump you up tonight on Chronicle and ABC. And congratulations. Is $75,000 a good start for you guys?
Yeah,
just like these sort of paradigm shifts. We're so used to just, oh my God, please don't take the jam space I've been living in for a year away from me. No. That is just like on the edge of insanity. So,
yeah,
for sure.
Could you tell us about the kind of like the apocalypse that happened in the EMF building? I went there once or twice, like a bazillion years ago, but I wasn't a part of that world.
Yeah, I mean, I was a part of it for 10 years. Before that, I was at 1312 Boylston Street behind Fenway Park.
Wow.
And now the remnants are in Somerville next to Market Basket in the artists collectives over there. But EMF, man, I feel like for me was a culmination of a lot of scenes and pockets. It was a 70-room jam space complex with the WEMF radio station in it and stuff. We also had high-ceiling recording studios. We had art galleries. LeBlanc was in there, which looked like the Warhol factory in its own world in that damn place. It was like a Chuck E. Cheese fun house for adults. During the last 2 years I was in Boston, the radio station got built and stuff, and I was invited to sort of have a room there, and I started living there. The occupation of that place went from like 1 or 2 people to 20 within a couple of months, with an additional bunch of people coming and staying for weeks at a time because we had rooms you could crash in. And down the street, we had the Out of the Blue Gallery on Nassau Ave, which had 6,000 square feet. And also a lot of people down there sort of living it up night and day. Some of them from our camp, so they go back and forth, spend a couple of weeks with us, spend a couple of weeks down the street, all the while moving in between the Middle East, P.T. Bears back in the day, now Sonia, and you had the ability, once again, for people going from being in a scene for 2 hours until they shut the bright fluorescence on and you have to go home, to now having a place where we encouraged you to go outside the box. No, you're not going to be ostracized and death by 1,000 paper cuts in here. Hey, do you want to record a new song today? Let's put you in the recording studio. Hey, you did your song? Go up on the radio show. We'll have you up there tomorrow. I'll interview. I was Monday through Friday, like 4 to 7 p.m. I interviewed like a fucking 150 bands there and shit in like a year. And like, it allowed people to believe their narrative more as sort of these outside the box creative types having an environment to sort of have that in. And I saw the changes. It was neat, man. There's like the movie Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and like they go in a time machine so they can learn how to play guitar, and they come back with like these long beards and these hippie chicks. And I saw people go through that time machine, and like they'd come to the EMF building, and a year later they're in like an experimental 7-piece progressive metal band with like feathers in their hair and like war tattoos, and they look like steampunks, and they had the whole template of Central to live in and live around. So that part was romantic. And then it was sold. Technological building, I recall, or something, didn't matter. I knew they weren't going to renew the lease. It was getting too expensive. Harvard, MIT does buy up all that space around there. Yeah. Tax-free, thank you, city, and turned it into maybe a lot of dorms and a lot of more gentrified areas and stuff. And that stranglehold got around the EMF building, and it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. You can't just displace hundreds, if not thousands of people, and not think there's going to be any repercussions, not that they care on the culture side. I know a lot of those people went back to the suburbs and now sort of, creative is a hobby again, and they come to visit on the weekend, but they talk in past tense voices and how it used to be and how they imagined it once. And yeah, I mean, it was a great place. It was a great place. It was the closest for me personally as like a Warhol factory in New York. I know a lot of people that were otherwise, described as mentally ill or batshit crazy or just completely hopeless, found a voice in there and made some really amazing art. Got out of some otherwise terrible situations, maybe living under bridges and, maybe just being around not the best sort of group of people. And it's heartbreaking. And a lot of people that I talked to who used to be a part of it or were in it and stuff do speak of it like it's some fucking Kennedy assassination. Thank you, Boston. Thank you for doing that again. To another art space, all hail Aaron Hernandez, Tom Brady, David Ortiz, and let's let the jocks. It's just a continuation of the bullshit if you were in the suburbs of Massachusetts for high school. Jocks sit at this table. The creative types are vagrants. They're sitting at this table. Hopefully they get their act together by 25. 27 usually a lot of the musicians panic at. And, Kurt killed himself by this point. What the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, very true, man. What would you say to like maybe some younger artists who are stuck in that, like, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to be famous or they're not connected to any culture, and maybe they want to kind of step into your world where they're kind of out there doing crazy shit. How do they,
Crazy shit, but I would also say this. Once again, let's redefine art for a second. And let's not make it as much about just a particular piece being put out or music put out. Let's not look at it as sort of a way of life. And if it is a way of life, then no time's really wasted. If you're looking almost like a statistician for a sport, like the highest score or the highest rating on a radar gun, yeah, you're going to set yourself up to fail because there's hundreds of millions of fucking people around the world that are all digging for that credibility and that high score in the game. But if you're looking for community and collective and culture, then no time's wasted. My advice for younger people or people of even all ages, because you can always become timeless and magical in the arts, is just to start to go to things. That's fucking tough enough. Support your local venue, support your local carcass at Mass Art, or Cuck is having a show on 420, or, start to feel out alternative culture and going out there and supporting it. You go to maybe some shows, or you go to maybe some house shows or art galleries or whatnot. You're eventually going to bump into some of the movers or shakers that really are doing it full time, not because it pays well, but there's no other choice. And the longer you're around those people, for me, it was like and Supreme and whatnot. I would even say China, because she trained in Malden, so I always consider her a masshole. She lived in Tewksbury, and she was an outsider too. And she did it in wrestling. And she did it a large part because she surrounded herself with the people on that side of the tracks. If you want to be a mechanic, surround yourself with mechanics. You'll grow in that direction. If you want to have any chance of believing your voice in artistry, then listen. Live a little bit less, move to the city, put yourself in the elements where you can walk around the streets of Alston, Cambridge, Brighton, Somerville. Wait till the weather gets warmer and seek out the energies on the streets, man. You'll find the misfits. You'll go down to Man Ray. You'll pick up on the vibes there. Hang out at Zuzu, just outside a little bit. You'll start to see the live wires and loose cannons. Follow them for a little bit. Once again, we're not talking about, mansions and Raris. We're just talking about you believing more and more in your creative path and maybe finding your own story through creative. Whether or not that allows you to date Alston Nines, I do not know. Whether or not that gives you a health care plan and health insurance and a house with a beautiful golden doodle, I do not know. But at least you can talk and sound and maybe feel and possibly look like an artist for a little bit, a creative type. And maybe you enjoy your own skin a little bit more and find some cool friends along the way. I do not know. So I would just say get out there, get your hands dirty, just go into some festivals or walking around the streets of Alston and Cambridge and see where that brings you. It's not too hard. You don't have to buy an amp. I'm not telling you to play a show a month. I'm just telling you to go outside.
Yeah, that is such a hard part of all of this, because like a lot of the advice and whatever or encouragement for artists that you see online is business oriented, or it is like it has something to do with money, or it has something to do with success and numbers. Like it's very rarely something more spiritual or tangible,
For sure. And I think it should be. If anybody was to do the research, John F. Kennedy, a month before he was assassinated, did a speech at Amherst College. Really easy to find. JFK Amherst. It's around 11 minutes. And Robert Frost had recently passed away, which was his favorite poet and stuff. And he does a really awesome speech about the arts and how if this nation's going to rise, then I see the artists put on the same pedestal as the businessman and the politician, and that the artist is an isolated person in this world because he sees truth where others are trying to disfigure it. And therefore the artist's path is a lonely one, where sometimes speaking that truth can destroy that artist's life. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit of that, but the fact of it is, he saw the same worth in it, that if we are to have an enriching society, then we need to reward the creative types, just with a little bit more of the keys to resources and maybe even cheaper living situations. So maybe they can come back, and instead of playing defense and fighting for sanity, they can start to flourish. I do not know.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better, man. It's like, it is like just constantly treading water with your fucking nose sticking out, hoping that you can actually do something. But you mentioned earlier that
if you don't have a concept of, like I said, like artists in a sense of a spirituality standpoint or a community standpoint, you're really skewered looking at it. Like, you're looking at it because you're hoping that maybe your band photo is going to get 100 likes, and through that somebody's going to DM you and maybe be cool to you a little bit more because of it. And, when you really dive into sort of a counterculture, bohemian lifestyle, the road less traveled and shit, man, the rewards are just being able to be around some cool, ingenuitive motherfuckers that really, once again, if you're a mechanic, surround yourself with mechanics. If you're a creative type, surround yourself with them. You're going to walk and talk different. And you're probably going to become more self-realized, like they talk about with meditation or therapy or whatnot. That the whole sort of process of just seeking out similar kind is just going to cause that. And, it's just when you start to look at, art and creative as almost a way of life, of searching and yearning for ways to express what is otherwise unexpressible, to a certain degree, to attract other like-minded people to talk about that with you, so you can, talk about whatever you created or whatnot, and evolve through that. I mean, that's a large part of why I do these videos, because I know afterwards some really cool people are going to ask some cool questions, and we're going to get right into it with something that's meaningful for both of us. And what an amazing magic trick art does with that. It allows you just to go right there. Hey, I heard you doing a podcast on arts and creative. Can we get right there? And in doing so, hey, I feel a little bit lifted right now. I feel like I'm going to be mad creative after this exchange and stuff. As a matter of fact, I know it. It's just the process of living in a creative world. You feel this charged energy all the time if you're fortunate to attract talented people like yourselves, and we can vibe like this. And maybe, optimistically, we all leave with a little boost in our step, and we want to continue moving forward with it.
Yeah, 100%, man. And with all that being said, with your videos and being out in the street doing crazy shit, what do you think's next for you? I know you were on TV talking to fucking Shannon Blake recently. You're on America's Got Talent. You're doing some crazy shit.
She's awesome.
Yeah, what did you make of her? I found that such a crazy pairing of people that you were making a video with her.
It was the greatest time. It was the greatest time. I will never forget that. That was my favorite day of last year by a country mile, because I keep talking about it. But really, can I show any proof in the pudding? I auditioned. I've been auditioning on and off for America's Got Talent for 5 to 6 years, because I did the Gong Show on ABC, which was a variety show hosted by Mike Myers, and I got to encore on it. It was war, but I did. And some of those producers went over to America's Got Talent, and I got on last year. I didn't really get on with a song I exactly wanted to do, but we had to play ball with the TV, and we got on the same page. I ended up doing 3 songs, and they didn't put 2 on TV, which kind of made me sad. So that's why I don't put up too many clips of it, because there was so much more to the story. It was literally showing a fight of Ali and George Foreman and just stopping it in the 5th round and being like, you can figure out what happens, right? And the second day I was there, I saw Shannon perform, and she did this song called Bad Bitch, and I really dug it. And so I approached her almost, it was like a high school cafeteria, and I'm just like, hey, that song you did, Bad Bitch, that was awesome. They're letting you say Bad Bitch on NBC. And we just start talking, she's from Utah area and stuff, and we get right into creative and community and culture, and how both of us, her to a large degree, is just bringing that vibe and flavor like we've been talking about this whole time to local culture, elevating other people, getting them to see with their mind's eye maybe why they're unhappy, why they're not more free with their spirit, blah, blah, blah. Needless to say, halfway through this, the NBC producers and everybody were all bright-eyed above us. And I remember the producer was like, and you guys have that conversation again, only over here? And he points to the center stage of the room. And we're like, sure.
Wow.
And it was really cool, because we move over to do it And Shannon's like, oh my God, I'm not an actor. I don't know how to do this. And it's like, we're just going to have the conversation again. And while we were talking, she was showing me these photos. She did like some runways in New York and stuff. And so I brought up like, man, you didn't picture yourself as like a fashion model and a runway star. And look, you're doing everything now. I mean, the fact of it is you're going to do this too. You know what? Just let me start the conversation with you again. And rather than worrying about acting it, let's just get in real time again with it. Let it flow. And like we literally sat down and we had that conversation again for another 30 to 40 minutes under all their cameras. And man, I went back to the hotel that room because they film it in Pasadena, California, and oddly enough, that's where I lived for 5.5 years when I went out west. So it was very surreal, a month after I finally came back to Boston to go back there and have that experience. But it was also like more surreal. I mean, that was like my favorite experience of that whole thing. And I had just met Shannon. It was like I only came to know her like music and whatnot after that, really. And it was like I just loved it because, man, it just felt like for a little bit NBC was like locked into where we were at for counterculture and
that's crazy.
And to see all these lights and cameras and the stage and like that like they have to stop everybody else, the performers, for like an hour just so me and Shannon can lock into this really awesome organic story. And unfortunately, they didn't have Shannon's performance on the show, so they really didn't have too much use for that and stuff. And so really, I just have a little bit of video footage myself and our photos and everything and the memories of it. And yeah, man, I mean, it just sort of goes to like show you, big corporate TV or whatnot, and how like they might get it that day even with the producers, but the higher ups are, I don't understand this. Needless to say, Shannon was at like 2K for followers at that point. Now she's over 1 million in a year. She didn't need that. She's well on her way and shit.
Wow.
But I tell you, man, if I ever get some real resources one day, I'm going to make those motherfuckers release the other 2 songs, because I did do Hot Dogs and Applesauce on there. I remember that. I knew I was in trouble because when they premiered it, they didn't even tell me I was going to be on TV that night, which is a big red flag. They will give you all the promotion shit so you can get your crew and everybody up to code. Hey, watch me Tuesday night on NBC. And I knew when they didn't do that there was going to be some WWE bullshit going on. And that's what happened. They cut 2 songs. Like, I was rocking and rolling up there. I did so good, I feel like they actually had me do the second show that night to another 1,300 people in the Pasadena auditorium because they wanted to make sure they got the audio right for Hot Dogs and Applesauce. And the song I did about soy cows because I was dressed up as a cow. And I want all that footage one day, man. I do. Yeah. I want my Shannon interview out there. I want to show NBC in like 10 years what they were sleeping on, What the fuck?
Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
It is, but man, when you break through and you're not like just playing with just trying to fight for your sanity and you got your nose to the ground and shit and you can start manifesting some shit, man, it does get like there, man. I mean, to like go on ABC and like sing this song Hot Dogs and Applesauce and win an encore and like Mike Myers is like, singing and like go from that to living with, WWE star China on, the Pacific Ocean and doing yoga with her each day to like, America's Got Talent, scaring Ellen and coming back here and, still able to manifest a lot of magic. I mean, I was singing to Marjorie Taylor Greene last month, Strong Dirty Horse Legs. And like, I'm just thankful, man, because I feel like I can manifest and build those sort of ideas and dreams up. And, I got a lot of videos coming out. Like I said, we're going to make the rat shitty, make Ken Moore Square shitty again this week. And I sang Shipping Up to Planned Parenthood yesterday. So I'm going to put that up this week. I got a good collab tomorrow coming out with the Glitter Boys, who take over the Sinclair every Friday night. They spin vinyl. Used to be over at the Boiler Room in Alston. They have a big show at Roadrunner at the end of the month and stuff. And they're all about culture, community, and bringing people together together for more and more time so they can start to get out of their skin. There's a video coming out for us tomorrow, and yeah, I just keep going and going and going. Next weekend's awesome. Cuck is having a big fucking show, 420. DM Cuckzine for an address. Wonderland's got a great little rave going Friday. And, you know, when you start to get locked into your narrative on creative. I mean, nothing felt better last night than pounding a dirty slice of pizza down in Alston and trying to wait for the 57 bus while you're dressed up as an iguana. And you're starting to feel there's going to be hope in the air this summer.
Yeah, man, it definitely sounds like you're fucking locked in. I appreciate you coming on the show, dude.
Yeah.
This is like,
Absolutely.
we didn't really, I knew that you were like a crazy guy making cool stuff, but I mean, I'm blown away by, you know, the insight and cool perspective you've given to us, man.
You caught me on a really good day, though, because I've been firmly entrenched with a lot of creative types recently.
Wow.
And this is a continuation of those conversations. Like, I was sitting on the front porch of this house show at Wonderland last night with these really talented fucking youngsters, man. They have a sound company. They're doing bigger and bigger festivals. And this is all we're talking about. And even though the winds were whipping and the police scanners were making us scared, it's really like we're talking right now. Like, I really truly believe, you know, it's like Fight Club, you know, how they say in the movie, it's on the tip of everybody's tongues. Just something brought it all together. And I think there is right now. I think we're coming out of the pandemic and lockdown, and I think we're coming out of it with sort of the attitude that, hey, we want this shit back, and by any means necessary. And I thank you guys for your time. This was a lot of fun, and you know, let's do it again soon.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. And if there's anybody else that you got in your world that you think we should talk to, like, please fucking send us some recs. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, if there was anybody when I was talking about them or mentioning, like, you know, some of the things like Cuck or Carcass, those would be two good places to start. Both of them are on Instagram and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Jack, who runs Cuck, and Landon, who runs Carcass, which is mass art, which was a dude who literally started out street fairs there with shopping carts that they found there.
Oh,
That's
wow.
Now
awesome.
it's like turned into like, you know, 80 to 100 vendors because Mass Art doesn't have a place to sell their art on campus. What the fuck? It's really interesting stuff. So, yeah, I can give you some people, get you hip that way and stuff.
Oh, yeah, man.
And,
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are wonderful. And
You too,
I
man.
got a lot of energy now. So, you know, let's keep it going. Don't be a stranger.
Fuck
Hell yeah, man. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for the conversation. We'll let you know when it's coming out. We'll look out for the next video, too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Push.
Hell yeah. Talk to you soon.
Boston Art Podcast is an independent DIY production by Brian Huntress and Theodora Earthworms. The information contained in this episode represents the views and opinions of the original creators or our guests, and does not represent any institution, organization, or business. Find us on Instagram at Boston Art Podcast, and tune in for a new episode every Friday. Thank you for listening.